me. All right, so hello. Nice to see you all on this beautiful sunny afternoon. Welcome. My name is Emily. I'm the chef and coordinator here at New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital's Teaching Kitchen, coming to you virtually through Zoom. Really excited to share all of our wonderful recipes to keep you healthy and well-fed throughout the cold winter. So our topic today is plant-based soups and stews. And we're going to be making 2 recipes, as well as discussing a little bit about what plant-based exactly means. It's not a term that, it's a term that we're starting to hear a lot more, but it wasn't until recently, you know, that it's kind of hit the mainstream. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So just a few Zoom ground rules before we get started. For those of you that are new to my kitchen here at New York-Presbyterian, I just would like to remind you to keep yourselves muted throughout the program. And if you have a question, today we're going to do our format a little differently. Usually we answer your questions through chat, but our moderator was pulled away to do another job today. So we're going to try this out. This is going to be new for us. So I'm counting on all of you to unmute yourself when you have a question. And then when you're done asking your question, you can mute yourself again, so we don't have crossover. So let's give this a try and see how it goes. And I'm really excited to hear your questions throughout our program. So with that, I want to go ahead and get started with our recipes. We're making 2 recipes, as I mentioned. The first is a really wonderful winter kind of cozy food. It's potato and kale soup. So we're going to be using this beautiful vegetable. You may not be familiar with it, but if you are, well, this is a leek. And with leeks, you don't want to eat the green part. So I'm going to cut about here and cut off the root, and this is what we're going to use. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what are you going to do with all that good green stuff? Well, it certainly is flavorful, but I wouldn't call it edible. It's very, very stringy and fibrous. Here, let me show you. See how stringy that is? So it's not going to be good to eat, but it's going to be good to make stocks and broths with. So I'm going to be teaching a class on stocks and broths in January if you're interested to join then. So for now, I'm going to pop all this stuff into the freezer, all of our extra tops and roots, and wash them really well and put them into the freezer. And then when I'm ready to make my stocks or my broths, I'll take them out for that. All right, so one thing you should know about leeks: they're fantastic in flavor. They're very buttery, they're sweet and creamy. They're nutrient dense as well. They contain vitamins A, C, and K, and some minerals too. They're also, because of that really stringy nature, they're very high in fiber. So I love to use leeks in my soups and stews. So let's go ahead and get started. The other thing you should know about them is that they grow in very sandy, dirty places. Right, so you can see here as I peel this back, see all that dirt right there? We're going to get rid of that, and I'm going to show you how. So first, let's take off the top. Let's take off the root. And I'm just going to cut this in half using a tunneling my hand, right? So I can just pull the knife right through, keep my fingers safe, using a chef's knife today. And it's my favorite knife to use. And now I'm going to put these leeks on a flat surface. So look how dirty and sandy. I don't know if you guys can see that. So let's clean these up. And I'm just going to start by slicing them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would you slice them before cleaning them? Well, because leeks kind of curl up, they've got layers and they kind of curl up within each other. You want to kind of cut them up to make sure that you can get into those crevices, all those little nooks and crannies. So at this point, I have a bowl of clean, cold water, and I'm going to take these leeks and throw them in, and this is how I'm going to wash them. All right, so many of you may have seen me do this before. It's always a good reminder. Let's get our pot hot here because we're going to get this sauteing. All right, and I don't think I introduced the second soup we're making. The second soup is a totally different kind of flavor. It's your sweet and sour sweet and sour soup. So that kind of soup that you may get from your favorite Chinese takeout or Asian takeout that you enjoy. That's what we're going to be making today from scratch. So make sure you get all the dirt off of your cutting board here. And I'm going to just show you how to clean these. You really just want to use your fingers and kind of like give them a little leaf massage, right? So make sure you are kind of breaking them up so that you can really get in all of the crevices. This is the best way to clean leeks. After I learned this, I've never done it any other way, because you just get all of the dirt that sinks to the bottom, and the leeks, as you can see, are floating to the top. So I'll just take a moment here to see if anybody has a question. You can unmute yourself. And I'm sure we might have a few people that might try to unmute themselves at the same time. So I just ask to be courteous and defer to one another.
Emily, it's Lynn. I'm wondering, I'm using cabbage. When you wash cabbage, do you have to do a similar thing with cleaning?
Great question. Yeah. So thank you, Lynn, and thanks for tuning in. So fortunately, cabbage does not get sandy in the same way that leeks do. They don't grow in that super sandy kind of environment. So I wouldn't worry about cleaning your cabbage this way. Yeah, good question. So I've just put some olive oil in the pot, and let's put our leeks in to get them sizzling. And do we have any other questions coming through? So far, so good. I have to say, Lynn, it was very nice to hear your voice. So you might adopt this questioning method in the future. We'll see how it goes today.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Emily.
Yes, hello. And
Yes,
just say
hello.
your name when you're asking your question.
Yes, this is Sharon. I was wondering,
Sharon.
are leeks and onions interchangeable in terms of cooking, or what is the difference?
That's a great question, Sharon. Thank you for asking that, and thanks for watching. So leeks and onions, what is the difference? They are interchangeable. I certainly have used onions when there were leeks called for in a recipe and vice versa. So I swap more like white or yellow or Spanish onions. I swap those pretty interchangeably. The difference is really that leeks are sweeter and they're creamier in texture. So you're not gonna have like onions onions just don't get as creamy as leeks. I don't know if that's a good descriptor, but you can certainly, if you didn't have leeks for this recipe, you could use onions. I just find leeks to be a little bit more delicate, a little creamier and sweeter. Good question. Thank you, Sharon. All right. So after, we're going to start by sauteing the leeks just until they're lightly brown. We don't want them to get, too dark here. And then we're going to add our garlic. And I keep purchasing elephant garlic by accident. So this is the elephant garlic that came. It's huge. It's the size of a shallot. And this recipe calls for 4 garlic cloves. So I think I'm just going to use 1 since it's this monster garlic today. All right, and we're just going to take the bottom off. This is kind of nice though, because it shows you like you get a sort of zoomed in close up of how to handle garlic. So I'm going to cut this in half, and we're just going to go for very thin slices. So when you're rocking your knife, right, just make sure your holding hand is in the shape of a claw, and you're pushing through and back, right? Very thin slices, very sharp knife, very careful hands. Any other questions? All right.
Hi, this is Amy.
Hi there.
I'm just wondering if I were trying to avoid some carbs, what would be some choices other than the potatoes?
Great question. And you are not alone this holiday season. I know some of us are trying to get a jump on our New Year's resolutions, or just trying to stay a little bit healthier. So certainly this recipe calls for 6 cups of potatoes. These are the potatoes we're using today. We grew them in our own garden here at York-Presbyterian, Hudson Valley. And if you wanted to reduce the amount of carbs, this is going to sound really simple and really silly, but reduce the amount of potatoes. So instead of using the 6 cups, maybe use 2 or 3 cups, and use a little bit less broth or liquid, and just make it to keep it thicker. So using less, is solution number one. And then I guess solution number two could be to try adding some lower carb veggies instead. So doing like, one part, so just to interrupt myself briefly, my leeks are just starting to brown, so I'm gonna add my garlic cloves. So adding like 1 part potato and, maybe some parsnip or cauliflower is a really good option and good potato substitute. So you could try adding, 1 cup of potato and 4 cups of cauliflower, something like that.
Thank you.
Good
That's
question.
a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I just added the garlic. I added the bay leaves, 2 bay leaves, and I'm going to throw in a whole cinnamon stick. Now I know what you're thinking. It's kind of an unusual flavor combination, but it works really, really nicely. Okay. And then our next step here is to add a bit of wine. So I have some white wine ready to go. Pop that in there and let that simmer. And we're going to add our potatoes next. So I've chopped up a bunch over here, but I'm just going to show you exactly how I did that. So I love this tunnel method, right? Just keeping your hands out of the way, right? So in half first, and these are fairly small, so it's pretty easy to work with them. But you want everything to be about the same size, about a medium dice. And just one thing I will say, if you're chopping your potatoes ahead of time, like I did, put them in a bowl of water. That's going to keep them fresh. This is also a good trick, if you are chopping potatoes up for a recipe that you want to make the next day, maybe you want to do a little prep ahead of time, you can just put your potatoes in a bowl of water and then, use them the next day. All right, so let's drain this water off. I don't want to use it in my soup. Okay, we're gonna add our potatoes in here. Oh, and I almost forgot, we need to add a pinch of salt. I'm using kosher salt. I like the kosher salt best because it distributes really evenly throughout the soup and it really just melds well. And I think I saw someone type a question in the chat. Just a reminder to everybody that we don't have our moderator today. So if you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask it here. Oh, I forgot to say what I'm doing. I peeled my carrot and now I'm gonna chop it. All right. So did we have a question come through? Okay, good. Everyone's doing all right. So I'm just
I
gonna
have a
cut
question,
this.
Emily,
Yes.
this is Lynn again.
Hi,
You
Lynn.
didn't peel the potato, but you did peel the carrots. How do you decide what to peel and what not to peel?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lynn. So I didn't peel the potatoes because I actually want the skin in this soup. I want the texture of the potato skin. And certainly with carrots, you do not have to peel them. The only reason I peeled it today is, first of all, I think that's how I wrote it in the recipe. So I try to stay true to my own recipes most of the time, although I do take certain liberties. But carrot peel in particular is very bitter when it's cooked into a soup. So if you are sensitive to that bitter flavor, then you may just want to peel your carrot. That's all. If you're not sensitive to it and you're, all about it, then go for it. It's just more nutrients in the skin and all that good stuff. So if you have no reason, nothing really bothers you in terms of bitterness, then really you can go ahead and just throw that carrot in with the peel and everything. All right. So our next step here is to add our broth. And I always do this little trick when I'm teaching these classes. I heat up my stock or my broth so that when I put it in the pot, it comes to a boil faster because, of course, our classes are always limited in time. So I'm going to add some water to this back here for our next soup. So I just added that in and it's going to come to a boil faster, which is just for convenience, but you don't have to do that at home. Certainly, if you do that, it's, can't find my burner. Oh, there it is. Certainly if you do that, it's just going to speed things along, which is what we're doing today. So I'm going to set this to the back so that we can get ready for our second option. Okay. And I'm going to heat up again. I have some water mixed with some broth in this pot. I'm just going to keep that hot back here for our next recipe while I get the rest of it ready. I know that was a lot of action. Did everybody follow that? Any questions?
Hi, Emily. This is Jen. I'm actually gonna ask the question that the other person put in the chat because maybe they're having some issues with their audio or something.
Oh, thank you,
Mary,
Jen.
you're welcome. Marianne Regina asked, can we reuse the cinnamon stick for flavor after we make the soup?
Thanks so much, Jen. And I wouldn't have
Yep.
seen that question, so I appreciate that very much. So
Yep.
Mary Ann, thank you for your question. And can you reuse the cinnamon stick after you've used it in the soup? The answer is yes. It's going to lose a little bit of its cinnamon potency, but certainly you could fish it out and use it again. I wouldn't use it in like a sweet application. For example, if you've used it in a savory soup, stick with savory, you know, throw it into some rice that you're cooking or something like that, and keep it savory. I wouldn't really mix the two, but certainly, I mean, these spices, we're infusing it with the cinnamon stick, but we're gonna fish it out, and I'm sure there's a little more in there that we could extract. So great question, and thank you, Jen, for relaying it. So you might notice what I'm doing here. I have these big, beautiful leaves of what's called dinosaur kale. I don't know why they called it that, but it's also known as Tuscan kale or lacinato. So I hold it, I kind of start it off at the base here, right? And then I hold it by the stem and I strip it. Okay, so this takes a gentle hand, because if you pull too hard, the stem will break. So let me just show you that again. Hold and kind of disconnect at the base, and then I kind of make a loose, like an herb stripper, you know, just like loose hands, pull through. So we're not using the stems today, but you certainly could use them in your stir fry. They, again, are edible. Just make sure that you chop them up really, really small. And that'll help to take care of the fibrous nature of these stems. So we're just focusing on the leaves today, and the stems you can use in your stir fries or just saute up and eat with your eggs. You know, again, they're very nutritious, very fibrous though. So keep that in mind. All right. So I'm just kind of doing some long chopping here and a little bit across this way. All right, this is done. It's gonna bowl ready for that. And this is gonna go in towards the end because of course the potato takes a lot longer to cook, right, than the kale. So we'll just set this to the side and kind of let that go in at the end. All right. So any questions before we turn to our second recipe? This is
Yes,
a good
Emily.
moment. Yes.
This is Emma here. I was wondering with the giant, the elephant garlic, how does it compare the taste with the regular garlic?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Emma. So the elephant garlic, I find that it's not quite as potent in flavor as the smaller garlic. It's comparable, but it's a little bit milder. So if you don't love garlic, then maybe try this variety. That's a good question, Em.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys are doing so well asking your questions and muting yourselves and unmuting yourselves. I'm very impressed with everybody, I have to say.
Emily, I have
yeah.
a question. Do you prefer real white wine as opposed to cooking wine?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Absolutely. And I think most chefs will agree with me. So, so cooking wine, unfortunately, it has a lot of salt added to it. I think that's so that people don't buy it in the store and then drink it. It's really not palatable. It's very, very salty. So I definitely would prefer, you know, it doesn't have to be anything high end or fancy. But I definitely would prefer a, you know, a wine that you would like to drink and, or, you know, is a little bit lesser than you'd like to drink. Yeah, thank you. All right, so you guys are gonna get to watch me do this again. My second giant garlic clove here. And we're gonna start on making our sweet and sour soup. I have such fond memories of ordering this soup when I was a kid from our local Chinese restaurant. And it's nice to be able to make it yourself, you know, without, often there's a lot of added sugar. So it's kind of nice to be able to make it without that. So I'm getting my pot warmed, gently warmed over here. And again, just gonna slice that garlic up. So one fun thing about garlic that I learned is the potency also depends on how you cook, how you manipulate it and cook with it. So if you smash it and crush it and mince it and and pulverize it, the garlic is going to be very strong in taste. But if you gently kind of slice it the way that we're doing here, the garlic is a little bit milder. So that's another thing to consider with your garlic, is how you work with it changes the flavor as well, which is really interesting. I kind of think that it's because, like, if the garlic is getting crushed and mashed, it feels like it needs to fight back harder. So it's like it kind of puts out all of its aromas and flavors to deter you from eating it. Whereas if you slice it, it doesn't really do that so much. All right, so I've got some ginger here. Just going to show you, I'm peeling the outside, just taking off that peel. And I always mention this because there's always someone on the Zoom that doesn't realize that you can freeze ginger. Just peel it first, just like this. And then you can pop that into your Ziploc bag, freeze it. And then when you're ready to use it, just grate it on your microplane or your zester. And today we're just going to go for a little mince. This is fresh. So if I'm chopping ginger, it's a little bit easier to chop from fresh. But if I'm grating it, it's easier to grate from frozen. So I just went for these little strips here, and then I'm going to kind of bunch these together like a little bundle of firewood and cut across, right, to make this little dice. It's very hard when you're working with something so small. So if you have like a spice grinder or something like that, feel free to just throw the garlic and ginger right in there with the spice grinder and a little bit of splash of water and grind it up, and that will work to kind of get this chopped up really nicely as well. But I'm showing you the old school way today. Any other questions? How's everyone doing? Good.
Emily,
Yes.
is the hospital still selling organic produce during this pandemic?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. And I think what you're referring to is our farmers market.
Yes,
So, so unfortunately, our farmers market has been postponed since March. The lobby is being used to screen patients. And so in order to keep everybody safe at this time, we are not holding our farmers market. But I do highly recommend that you go to your local farmers market safely, right? Often they're outside, which is really great. That's even better. And then of course you can, keep your mask on. If you have eye protection that you'd like to wear, certainly. I have seen some very special outfits at the farmers market, so you will not be alone in however you decide to suit up to keep yourself safe. That's very important. So we've got our pot hot here. I chopped up some scallion, and let's start with a little bit of avocado oil for this one. The reason I'm using the avocado oil at the base of this soup is I actually don't want that strong olive oil flavor. So you can use anything neutral, avocado, and untoasted sesame oil would be good too. Perhaps sunflower or sunflower oil or something that's pretty mild. Let's get that going. All right. And I'm just going to kind of get those together. And I have some dried mushrooms here. These are dried shiitake mushrooms. And I soaked them in some liquid. So I'm just going to kind of scoop them out and squeeze that liquid out. And we're going to saute these in here too. I'm not going to throw that liquid out though. That liquid is gold. This is very flavorful because it's been sitting in the shiitake with the shiitake mushrooms. So let's do this so I don't forget. We're going to use this in our soup today. So we'll throw it in with the broth. All right, so saute that. We're going to add, again, it's a little sweet, it's a little sour, it's a little spicy. So we're going to add a little bit of our red pepper flakes as well. Get those in at the base. And already smells really, really nice. Okay, and then a couple other things. This recipe calls for bamboo. It's kind of hard to find bamboo, but the traditional recipe does call for that. So what I found, which we're gonna try today, is these bean sprouts. I don't know if you can see those, bean sprouts in water. Of course, if you can't find these and you can't find bamboo, just write the whole thing off. It's totally fine, leave it out. But these bean sprouts, I found at our local ShopRite, so you can find them around here. So here they are, drained. This is what they look like. And we're gonna throw these in here too and kind of saute these up as well. The bamboo is nice. It has, you know, a specific kind of a taste that's yummy. But this, I think this will work today as well. Kind of saute that all together. All right, and I'll take another question if anybody has one for me.
Emily?
Yes, hello.
Hi, this is Janice. Is it better to use the fresh or dried shiitake mushrooms? Does it matter?
Yeah, so Janice, thank you for asking your question, and always good to hear your voice. So it's not better or worse to use the fresh or the dried. It just so happens that I like to use fresh when possible, but it just so happens that I didn't order the fresh ones, and I fortunately had the dried ones. So I had the dried ones in my pantry. It's always good to have dried shiitake mushrooms or dried mushrooms in your pantry because they are very, very flavorful, and in a pinch, they do well. So either one, there's not really a better or worse, I would say, in this particular case.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you. Thanks for watching. All right, so we've got the ginger, scallions, garlic, red pepper flakes, mushrooms, our bamboo or our sprouts in this case, and we're just gonna saute that just like just a couple minutes to really get those flavors out. Then we're gonna add our vegetable broth and our tofu. So let's talk about tofu quickly, and I promise we'll talk more about plant-based foods too. This is the tofu I'm using today, organic, firm tofu. And you kind of cut it out, and then you drain the water out, right? It comes packaged in water. And I'm just gonna use half the block today.
I want to ask a question.
Oh,
Emily?
there, you have a question for me, yes.
Yeah, this is Roger. The liquid that you soaked the mushrooms in, what was it? Is it just water or just
yeah,
water?
so thank you so much, Roger. Yeah, thank you for your question. That's a good clarifying one because it doesn't look like water anymore, does it? So yeah, definitely I just threw the mushrooms in some water and this is what they look like now. All right, great question. Okay, so back to our tofu quickly. I cut it in half, and then the way to store tofu, if you're not using it all right away, is keep it in fresh water and just change the water every day. You can keep it, for about a week if you change the water every day, and then you can spill it all over your cutting board like I did. That's what we have these things for. So certainly you don't have to use it all at once, all right? So while that's kind of finishing up its saute, let's go ahead and cut this into cubes. So I'm gonna go straight across first. Like if you had the whole block, you would probably make 6 slabs. And now we're gonna cut these into half, right? And you just want everything to be about the same size. I mean, it's a tofu cube, not a perfectly diced anything, so don't worry too much about it. All right, so there's our tofu, we're ready to add that. We're also gonna add a couple other things. We're gonna add some soy sauce. If you can't have soy sauce or soy for whatever reason, you could probably use coconut aminos, which are sort of a soy sauce like substitute, I guess. But the only thing is you wouldn't be using the tofu then either. You would use some other kind of protein that you can enjoy. All right, so let's get back to our pot here. Let's throw in this mushroom water for our flavor, extra flavor. We're gonna throw in, I've got some nice hot vegetable stock back here. Okay. And let's toss in our tofu. This is very, very quick to put together once you kind of have it all laid out. Our soy sauce is going in. Our toasted sesame oil. Now I just want you guys to notice how dark this bottle is, right? Toasted sesame oil is very different from untoasted sesame oil, and the flavor is very different too. This is deep and nutty and rich and wonderful in my opinion. We're gonna add a little sprinkle of sugar to this recipe. Again, if you wanted to omit the sugar, you certainly could. You can keep it lighter by leaving the sugar out, or you can use coconut sugar or monk fruit, just a little pinch or sprinkle. It does add kind of like that more familiar sweet and sour soup recipe that you might be used to probably has a lot of sugar in it. So, so we're making it a little healthier. All right, so let's add that in. Let's bring that up to a boil. And then I just want to talk about our noodles here, right? So I have these rice noodles that I cooked ahead of time. These are your regular pad thai rice noodles. You can, again, you do want to use some kind of, Asian variety of noodles. I really like the brown rice noodles if you can find those. Of course, that's a little bit healthier for you than this variety, which is just regular pad thai noodles. So this is coming to a simmer. Pop some noodles in there, give it a stir. Smells very good. And we're gonna finish this off with just a few things. One here is, I'm not sure if you guys can see this, right? Cornstarch mixed with some water. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna give this soup that wonderful characteristic kind of mouthfeel that we're looking for, that it kind of coats your mouth in a different way, if you guys know what I mean. So we're gonna add this cornstarch mixed with water and throw that in. And it's important, of course, that you mix it with water, because if you don't, it's gonna clump. It's gonna, have little floating balls of cornstarch everywhere, and you don't want that. So that's why we mix it with water. All right. So that's called making a slurry. It's also important that your water be cold when you mix it, because if it's hot, it's going to activate the cornstarch. So heat activates the starch and makes it kind of start to cook out a little bit. So certainly mix your cornstarch with cold water first, then add it to your pot, and that is called a slurry. All right, let's pop this off to the side, and I'll take another question if anyone's got one for me.
Emily, it's Lynn again. If you have regular plain sesame oil and you have regular sesame seeds, can you toast the sesame seeds and add it to add flavor?
Oh, that's such a creative idea, Lynn. I really like that. So certainly you can always toast your sesame seeds to add flavor, regardless of what you do, to the oil. If you didn't have toasted sesame oil, but you had sesame seeds, certainly just toast them up and grind them up a little bit and sprinkle them in your soup, and they'll give a really nice flavor and a little texture as well. I really like that idea, Lynn. Thank you. All right, so I'm just working down my scallions here for our garnish, and I forgot to mention it with the first batch, but you can always put these little roots in some water. So I'll show you a little demo here. Many of you know this trick already. Put your little roots in some water and watch them grow. So you kind of want to make sure they stay propped up. This bowl is too big for these guys, but you kind of want to prop them up, keep the roots in water, and then after a few days, you'll see these will start to grow. So you can use them a few times. Just keep them by a sunny window and they'll be happy. All right, so let's check on our kale soup back here. It's missing the kale, right? The potatoes are starting to feel a bit soft, but I think they need more time. You can feel it with my spoon, right? They're still a little bit hard. I'm gonna add more liquid to this just because I'm noticing that they need a little more. So generally with soups, I like the liquid to be about 1 inch or 2 higher than the vegetables. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's throw our kale in, let that cook down a bit. And then 2 options here. Before you add the kale, you can take out the cinnamon stick and the bay leaf, and you can use what's called an immersion blender. I brought that out so you guys could see it. This guy, immersion blender or handheld blender. And you can kind of puree it a little bit so you have some more, the texture of the potato kind of gets broken up and it kind of intersperses in the soup nicely. So you can do that, or you can just throw your kale in and not skip that step and leave it chunky. So you've got like a semi-chunky and very chunky option here. All right, so back to our sweet and sour soup. can see here with the cornstarch, it's thickening a little bit, but not too much. Looks really nice. Let's throw in our scallions, and we're gonna finish this off with that sour, characteristically sour taste. So we're gonna add some fresh lime juice, and I just kind of squeeze these right in. This is how I get my arm workout. But if you wanted to, grab these, pinch together, go inside the lime, and twist. So this is a great trick if you don't have a citrus reamer, or if you just have one of these tongs lying around. All right, so again, you can just squeeze it, work on your arm muscle, or go in and twist. Do we have another question?
Yeah, Emily, it's Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. Could you use lemon instead of a lime, or would that change the taste of it?
Good question, Judy. So I would say you could use lemon if you had to. It wouldn't be my first choice because lemon does have a very characteristic kind of a flavor, but it's gonna add, you know, some nice acidity to this dish. I think that in lieu of the lime juice, a better substitution, if you have it, would be rice vinegar. So that might be, yeah, that might be a little bit better because lemon has like almost a touch of sweetness to it, in my opinion. So so I would go for that instead. Do a little rice vinegar.
What would be the proportion?
It's a good question. So I think we have 1 lime juice, which is usually equivalent to 2 to 3 tablespoons. So maybe start with 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar.
Okay, great.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. All right, so this is beautiful. This is done. Sweet and sour soup is ready to go. I'm just gonna plate this for you all so you can have a look at it. That smells so good. All right, so you've got some protein in there. You've got lots of veggies, right? And it's nice. You can really make this, you can make this with stuff from your pantry mostly. You know, if you've got the garlic and you've got the ginger in your freezer, maybe you got a can of these bean sprouts hanging around, some broth and things like that. It's pretty easy to put it all together quickly. I think everything is actually a pantry item except the fresh scallions. So it's a good thing to know how to make. All right, so with the time that we have left, and while our other soup is just finishing up, I just want to walk you through quickly why we're talking about plant-based today and what is plant-based eating. And I love plant-based, this sort of plant-based diet. I don't like calling it diet because that's sort of like a bad word in my book, but plant-based eating, plant-based meals are lower in fat, they're higher in fiber, and it's a diet that really focuses on health, a way of eating that really focuses on health, primarily consists of plants, right? You guessed it, from the word plant-based. And but it may also occasionally include a little bit of meat, a little bit of seafood every now and then, a little bit of eggs, some dairy, but that's not the focus. The focus is really on the plants. So why is this diet or this way of eating getting so much attention these days? Really has to do with the health effects. So it can potentially lower your risk of developing heart disease, which is still the #1 killer in this country. So plant-based eating is a wonderful thing to adopt, whether or not you have heart conditions, but especially if you do have any kind of cardiac issues. It's different from a vegan diet. Vegan diet excludes all animal-derived products. So no honey, no meat, no fish, no eggs, no dairy. That's vegan, right? No poultry, none of that. Anything that comes from an animal, in the vegan way of eating, that is excluded. Some vegans will even go so far as not to wear leather because it comes from an animal. So vegan can really be a lifestyle as well. Plant-based eating is also different from a term that we're all familiar with, vegetarian. You can eat, French fries and ketchup and Oreos all day on a vegetarian diet, right? But I wouldn't call that plant-based. So it's a different there's a distinction there, right? Plant-based is really focused on health and primarily consists of plants. Simple, pretty simple. Many reasons to enjoy more plants in our diets, ranging from environmental reasons, some ethical concerns with how we raise animals in this country, and of course, health. So those are some of the reasons to focus on it. The other thing I love about the plant-based diet is because it focuses on plants, it means that we're all getting more fiber. And not only that, it means that we're often getting different types of fiber because we're eating different types of plants. So one of the things that I think is truly amazing and interesting about plant fibers is that while we think of fibers as simply soluble and insoluble, there's a whole world of plant fibers that that kind of nest under the soluble and insoluble label. So all these different types of fibers feed our gut bacteria and support our gut in different ways. So the fiber from a black bean may speak to a certain bacteria in your gut, while the fiber from a cannellini bean may speak to another beneficial bacteria or probiotic in your gut. So all of these plant foods are prebiotic material, meaning that they're going to support a flourishing digestive and gut system, which we're starting to learn more and more is the foundation of health in more ways than we originally thought or could have imagined. So it's pretty exciting stuff. The foods that we're using today, potatoes, leeks, kale. I mean, kale has, of course, numerous health benefits. It's the most nutrient-dense green out there. It's in the cabbage family, contains a little bit of protein, but I love it because it has, in 1 cup, has 200% of your vitamin A. It's just amazing in 1 cup of kale. Also 600% of your vitamin K. So if you have any issues with blood thinners or something like that, you do want to be mindful of your consumption of vitamin K. So be careful when you're eating kale if you have any kind of blood thinning medications that you're on, and speak to your doctor to see if it's an appropriate food for you. All right, everybody, we have about 3 minutes left, so let's check on our soup, and I'll take a few more questions about plant-based or anything else that's come up for you today.
Emily, what's plant-based sausage?
Great question. So I did offer, if you wanted to make this kale and potato stew a little bit heartier, you could throw in a plant-based sausage. So what is that? For example, there's a company called Beyond Meat, and they make sausages that are plant-based, meaning that everything in that sausage comes from a plant and not from an animal. So that's what I'm referring to when I refer to a plant-based sausage. It's a wonderful, it's a wonderful thing to enjoy once in a while, and certainly I have had these kind of meatless meat products. Just keep in mind though that there can be a lot of salt added to those, so you may need to adjust the amount of salt that you're using in your recipes to kind of balance out the salt in the sausage. Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking it. And of course, if you enjoy, the occasional chicken sausage or something like that, feel free to add a little bit into your soup. It's still going to be primarily from plants. I just want to show you how nice and warming this looks, right? You've got your potato, you've got your kale, you've got your carrot, all those nice warming foods to keep us grounded and keep us nourished through the winter. I'll take 1 or 2 more questions if there are any, and then I think we'll close our class for today. Anything else? Okay. That means I did a good job explaining things. So all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for watching. If anything does come up, if you've got other questions that, I should have asked Emily, why didn't I think of that? That's what I wanted to say. Certainly feel free to email me. That happens to me all the time. So feel free to email me. I will always get back to you with my best answer. And have a very happy holiday, everybody. I hope that you can enjoy making some of these plant-based recipes start your New Year's resolution today. There's no reason to wait. You know, if your goal is to start including more plant-based foods, you know, get your year started off now. You'll feel so much better come January 1st because you will already have included more plants in your diet. So leading up to the new year. So with that, everyone, have a very happy holiday. And I hope that I hope you all have a happy new year. If I don't see you before then, we do have one more class this year. It's going to be the Suppers with Salmon next week. And then we're hitting the ground running on January 4th. We've got healthy recipes to help you kickstart the new year, and lots of programs coming up through all of January. So please tell your friends and family, share with anybody in your community if you're enjoying these classes. Thank you so much for your wonderful Zoom participation and questions. And I miss you all, and I hope you have a very happy holiday. So stay well.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Bye, Emily. Thank you so much.
you.
That was
Thank you.
great.
Good
Holidays,
job,
thank
Emily.
you.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Holidays.
Thank you, everybody.